So,
Hey.
welcome Daniel Marianne to the Larpar Show, where we talk about what is money, what is coming, and how to protect our family. So Daniel has been living the dream. He says that that only things that limit us is the idea that are limited in our heads. So we can visualize whatever we want. Yeah. The rest is up to us, really. Daniel is a physical therapist. He's an actor, a writer, a personal trainer, and he's here to share his story about what he's been learning and share his story with other people. And he's at the moment writing a book as well, which should be out in a couple of months. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So welcome, Daniel. Tell us about your story. How did you get into all this a few years ago? Let's go back a few years and share your story.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, Lawrence. Thanks. No, it's been a fascinating journey up to this point. I mean, anybody who's on the journey of seeking and searching for answers will tell you that. And what's really interesting is just in general here is that when you are looking for answers and objectively, and you're just trying to uncover the truths and your truth, let's say as well, it's fascinating how everything comes to you that is needed at the right time, and there's a lovely synchronicity in that. And I think that if I was to look back at my life, I thought I was going to be a rugby player, a professional rugby player is what I wanted to be. I was on the Leinster Academy, Leinster Youths, and was in Carlow IT on an academy there, a program for that. And really, I thought that's where I wanted to go with my life. And just to give you context to the story, that brings me nicely to it. So really, that's what I wanted to do all the way through. And then I went to college, and I actually went to study retail management originally in DIT. I did that for a year. I got a 2-1 in the end of that. It was okay, but I didn't want to really own a shop or run a shop at the end of it all, to be honest. And that was my conclusion. But I always had that sport in the background, and I was really. And then I did get a scholarship to Carlow IT to be on a course in that, and that was very good. It was a development course for the Leinster Academy, and it was very good. Yeah, loads of experience. Love it. Love the sport. Love the exercise, and that's been my background, and that really got my flair for strength and conditioning and helping people and getting into that whole side of things. So a big part of it was sports physiology, exercise physiology, and strength and conditioning modalities. So that really was my background. And then that from there it brought me to, I kind of realized I didn't have enough in my own right just on that course alone. It was a degree. I wanted something to add to it, and so I ended up doing neuromuscular physical therapy after that in Dublin, and that was a great course, and it was a lovely combination of the two. It was a marriage of the two, the kind of sport and exercise background, the practicality, strength and conditioning, and then the physical therapy. So it was a really nice mix. So really what I went to do after that, I opened a gym. I worked for people. I went to Equinox in America first, in Back Bay in Boston, a lovely, good spot, and realized how professional and how cool things were the way they did it. And they operated with such precision, and they had a sales department, marketing department, they had Apple computers, everything was so glitz and glam and so well operated, smooth operator, the whole operation was. So that really was inspiring. And then I came back to Ireland and did some work in Killashiel Hotel and did a few years there, and then realized from there.
What year was that? That kind of?
It would have been in, good question, in 2012 maybe, or 11.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it would have been, 2010 actually, because that's when I would have been there for the 2 years or 2.5 years. So 2010. And yeah, it really taught me that industry taught me, when you're working at that level for minimum wage, practically minimum wage, it taught me exactly what not to do and how to treat people in terms of what care really is for people in terms of the fitness industry and what they really want from their goals. And I really found that it was like fire brigade tactics. Unless things were in flames, nobody was running to action. So I learned so many skills from that alone. So it is a blessing. It's not that I'm not going to get given out. Actually, I know it sounds like I am, but it was really great because I was cleaning scum lines off pools one day, cleaning the treadmills. I was the only one with the degree in there. Then doing all the assessments, doing the classes, just got involved in all of it. So it was a good lesson. But that's what inspired me to set up my own place. So I ended up setting up my own gym on the back of that, because I'd done thousands of sessions with people, and really all people wanted to do was be able to stand up without their back breaking, lift their kids, feel good, have a flat stomach. They didn't want to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, and because the majority of people are the average mom and dad, as you know, walking the streets. So I wasn't getting like major athletes in necessarily, but I really figured out at some point that what people want is a general program that will suit everybody. And that's really what I came up with in my gym. It was called Tight and Fit, not tight and fit, even though it sounds like that, but it's clever. But now it's Titan as in the gods, Titan. So there's a lot of geeky reasons why I picked that name, but what I saw, my vision for it in the first place was to have a gym that, well, I wanted to figure out, well, where are the origins of training? Where was the grassroots of how we got into training per se? And it comes back from the Greek mythology and the Greek stories. And well, I guess there's Greek facts as well, in that they had the Olympics. They started the Olympics. And I really researched, well, what was involved in that? And was that, what do they do to get involved? And a lot of it was based on, it started off with the Roman soldiers, or sorry, the Romans were doing it as well, but the Greek soldiers, and they would have to carry their shields and do marathons. That's where the marathon came from in the first place, because they used to have to carry their equipment that distance. And I think it was actually less distance than we do today. It was 14 miles or something like that was what they had to carry it at the time, which was an enormous amount for them at that time to do, with all their weight and the shield, the sword, the supplies they need for war. So that was their test. So they were the ones who they're like gladiators in a way. They were the ones who had to be put through these tests. But anyway, that was part of what the background of what I was interested. But in reality, what I really merged was those two ideas. Once you get to the root of what actually it's all about, then you can add on your own flair to it. Because I realized, unless you really get the baseline, the root of the tree, you're not getting a good picture of. You're only getting secondhand information, third-hand information from others who who have their opinion on what health and fitness is about. So I really wanted to get the grassroots of it all and figure it out. So I came up with a way of doing it. And I realized from college is that it's an exact science. And a lot of trainers out there today, when they're giving programs, they're not really, they're doing fitness, inverted commas. Might be sweating for an hour, but that doesn't mean you did a good job. It's better than doing nothing. Don't get me wrong. It's great when people are doing something. Anything is better than nothing. But I realized there was no science. There wasn't putting the science behind it. They weren't doing what you can be very targeted. So it's all about what do you want to get out of the training. And that's a lot of people are just doing random stuff and going to different trainers and with loads of mixed information. But so what I really focused in on was what is the least amount you can do to get the maximum results. That was what my whole ethos was, and do it well. And our tagline was, "We train smart." Because of that, it's about doing just the right amount. Because there's so many people who have so much great energy for it, but then end up fucking themselves up by injuring themselves or overdoing too many days or wrong type of training. And this has just solved all those problems. So that's what I was aiming to do. So, and I did that for 7 years. I ran the gym for 7 years. So started at 22.
Okay, amazing. Good stuff.
So I was a go-getter. I was loving it. Geez, when I opened it, I really feel like, in hindsight, looking back at it all, I really feel like I've got a degree in people now. But no amount of college would teach you any of that stuff, the real life stuff. Well, what's it like to transfer money? What is it like to, to convince somebody for you to give them their money? It's funny. You think you're a superstar in the early days. You're thinking, if I do this amount of clients, I'll have this, and I'll rock up, and I'll be great, and I'll look great, and everybody will love me, and all that. But it's really the hard-earned money. I'd learned that what real money is, and it humbled me, but I also loved it. I mean, I had a great community of people around me by the end of it all. So that's really my business background and my experience with that. That long enough answer for you.
That's very good. Yeah, very good. Gives an insight into where you came from, and what were you doing before. Because as we know, a lot of people's lives have changed recently as well, and especially from 2020, a lot of people's businesses have changed as well. Yeah. So let's bring it up to speed now for the last couple of years, say for the last 5 or 6 years. What have you been up to? What have you been learning? Yeah, because that's what I want to really get
Yeah,
into. Yeah.
exactly. No, so we will get into that. So I ended up doing acting as well as that. After that,
Okay.
I ended up, well, I had done it as a child, a young child. I did a production of Tom Sawyer and traveled the country around it. It was in Oscuelga in Irish. So, I barely had any English in me at the time. I was born in Romania, so it was funny just coming over to that transfer over, and we did a tour around the country, and we won the All Ireland for it. It was a competition, and I was the lead actor in it. So that kind of was my flair for the acting. And then I kind of put to rest because it really wasn't cool, let's say, or wasn't compared to the rugby stuff I was doing, and it wouldn't those worlds wouldn't have fitted together too well. So I took it back up again when I had more time on my hands, when I was running the business, the gym. I was able to actually just take up other stuff I wanted to do and have time because I had people working for me. And that gave me that opportunity, which is great. And I learned so much about that. And this is kind of bringing me back to modern day now. What's happening with my life and to the modern time now. So the last few years, what I've been up to answer your question, I've been researching a book to write a book, and the whole thing was it actually started organically. I wasn't really trying to write a book. I was trying to find truth and information about what's going on in the world around me, and really, because I was kind of leaving the gym aspect of then, I was sort of my interests were going from that a bit more, and I was trying to figure out, well, because I always wanted to help people, and that's my big thing. It still is today. I was trying to find out a way. I was getting a bit bored from what I was doing because I felt like while I was making money, I wasn't growing exponentially where I was going to make a big impact. And my interests were going in other places, as I said, with the acting and then just exploring truths. So what I ended up coming across was, it's like how it all the journey began is it starts as one question, and one question, if answered, leads you to other questions. And at the end of it all, what I found is myself in a place that I never thought I'd be in terms of what the answers came to me. And for me, my first questions were actually about the moon landing. And I kind of was taking it not too seriously initially. And then when I investigated, because I have a dogged approach, when I want to find something, I'll spend every hour under the sun until I get that answer, or whatever it is, the answer may be. So it was like, well, the whole question was, well, was the moon landing real? Like, what happened? Like, was it, and if it was real, well, then tell what was the real story if there was some truth to it, and if it was fake, well, what happened and why? How was it faked? So what I came to after hours of watching footage of the astronauts and all the stuff, and then looking at the science of it, whether the blast from the ship would have worked, and who took the picture, is that's another an inconvenient question for NASA. Who took the picture when they were on the moon? If he was the first person to land on the moon, who took the picture that he got there? Things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was other aspects, like the lighting was not right, and the way the flag moves, and all these things. There was multiple shadows, and they have been tried to be explained away. But since then, it really led me on a journey, and I even cross-referenced the Live Aid concerts at the time, because the technology that they had at the time at Live Aid, the concert, the charity, was about that was the first time they claimed they had multi video linkage around the world, that they could show the live performances all around the world using this network. Okay. Now that they claimed that was the first time, but that was of course way after the moon landing. It was in the 70s, and the moon landing wasn't, obviously. And so all these anomalies that kept cropping up about the story of what happened. So now I'm going to fly forward. So I really found that ultimately I determined that the moon landing couldn't have been real, and there's many reasons. And I found more and more evidence to show that would be the case as the time has gone on. So what I ended up writing in terms of the book, when I started writing, I was writing all this research down and trying to compare it, the notes and what it's all about. And I ended up realizing what I'm really writing is the link between science and spirituality, and how they are one and the same. Yet in our society, we've been convinced that they're separate. That's really the summary of what my book is about. And I'm calling it an answer for everything, because it's not that I have the answers for everything. It's that it is an answer for everything. It gives a reason for everything in a way, because we all say, well, that happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. but they never really considered the real reason. What is that reason? And yet we experience these cause and effects every day of our lives. Yet we just kind of put it up to chance or coincidence or sure it was meant to be, or but nobody's really, and my whole thing is, well, let's get to the science of it. There has to be a scientific answer for this. It's not just randomness. And when you uncover that, you start realizing the layers. When you peel back the layers of the scientific narrative, you realize that it's very thin when asked. When the right questions are asked, there's a veil that starts dropping off what the science narrative is, as we've been told officially. And really, there's some basic stuff about who we really are and how our genetics works is what has become apparent to me. And this is one of the reasons, going back to the moon landing, the reason I'm going to give you two scientific reasons that they never came to the moon. Number one, what we were told is that they could manage to get through the Van Allen radiation bands, which envelop the Earth. And we were told that actually they don't envelop the Earth, they kind of create that shape. And if you fly out at the right time at the thinnest part of the atmosphere, you can manage to get through it using a tin can effectively, and a Casio watch powered. That's the kind of level of computer technology they would have had back then. And we were expected to believe that they were able to, first of all, penetrate the Van Allen bands without dying. And secondly, that the watch powered calculator could work to drive the ship that distance. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. And only the fact that we've jumped so far in our technology now can we contrast that and say that was mental, that people believed that and still believe it.
Yeah, and a lot of people still believe it. That's the whole thing, isn't it? But maybe just because they don't know anything else. They're just looking at the mainstream stuff and they haven't gone and done their own research. So that's why with myself personally, I like to go and dig myself and do a bit of research. Yeah.
Exactly. And all things that I'm saying, I'm not saying for you to ever believe me. I'm saying if you do your research, like you've said, I really do believe people will come to the truth, because there are certain objective truths that finally surface if you keep digging. And that's the reality. And anybody who's super skeptical, it's okay to be skeptical, but don't be lazy. If you don't do anything to check yourself to see if I'm right or am I off my rocker, then you shouldn't have a say in it. But if you look at it and then come to that conclusion, I'm happy with that, because at least what it does for you is this investigation. It makes you smarter, because your brain has to come up with so many different varieties of possibilities and try and make them make sense. And that's only good for your brain. Because if you just instantly shut it down and say, no, not real, didn't happen, couldn't happen, that's it, you're an idiot, then you really are missing out. You're not expanding your own consciousness. And that is what I'm all about. That's the key to all this. I'm still okay to be wrong in a lot of topics. I don't own the topics. I've just come across them and believe that they're right for the moment, as from the viewpoint I see the world. And that's all you can ever do as you're going through, I believe anyway.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. It's all about learning as well, educating yourself and going back to doing your own research. Yeah. If you get that gut feeling and you feel something isn't right, don't just take it on board. You know what I mean? And we've been kind of trained to do that from a very, very young age. Just listen to the teacher or listen to the person of authority and do as they say. People
exactly. And that's, but you've nailed it on the head there. Even the structure of I think it was one of the Rockefellers or something said that they were funding the educational programs. They said if we have the children up till they're 7 years of old, we have them forever. We've shaped their minds. So it doesn't matter what else they put into it after that. We have them. And that's because they understood the neuroplasticity of the brain. And if they rewire the brain so to make us use our pragmatic side of our brain early on and the mathematical side, and don't use the other side, the creative side, and they could structure it in such a way that it limited our way of thinking. And that's what they've successfully done for most of people. And I think, and I've thought this for a long time, the really successful people in the world weren't exactly brilliant at school. It was despite school that they were brilliant, because they picked their own way of doing it. They wrote their own path, and they knew themselves that wasn't the right way for them. And then they managed to write their own way. They weren't constrained by the laws that they had to apparently keep. And that's why I think a lot of the geniuses out there have done that. And the people that are, alternative, and we have to give that breathing space to people and change our curriculum and how we operate. I do believe that, to help encompass more. So it's not just a certain type of individual.
Yeah. That being said, I think it'll be a lot harder to change the system or change the whole way we are being brought up and what's around us. I think people need to just take control of it themselves. If you feel something isn't right, go and do a bit of research about it. And you feel it's okay to homeschool your children. If it's not the right path for you, go and do it.
Yeah, but that takes courage,
It does.
and people need to read. And if you said it dead on there, is that it's about taking responsibility, putting on your big boy pants or girl pants on, and saying, "Look, I can take charges," and we have been conditioned to actually let abscond that responsibility and say, "No, some father figure or mother figure, i.e., the government, can do all the work for us, and if things get sticky, we'll just rely on them to do it, help give us a dig out." And I mean, I was guilty of that as for years ago, but I also felt like there was always something wrong with the system in some way. And I kind of questioned, why is it that people keep getting further and further disenfranchised when new regulations come out or new taxes or the people never really they always got the raw deal. And even if they were good people, I found that hard to take actually. And I found it very unusual when I asked my parents at the time, well, why is that the way that is with the bank system and the way how it all works? And they said to me, because that's the way it always was, and good luck trying to change the system. And that's what I got back. And a lot of people were viewed it that way. But if everybody views it that way, nobody changes it. So it takes people to put on their big boy pants to actually make that happen. It's not going to fall upon us, this savior, like we've been conditioned. And actually that's how and in religion, it's been conditioned that way as well. Some savior is going to come for you. Just wait a bit longer, and then Trump is going to save you and he's going to change it, or whoever the person is.
The new government that's coming in. We'll be all having elections now soon. There'll be elections in America, in Ireland, something interesting here in Ireland. We don't really get into politics on this show, but our leader, our Taoiseach, our Taoiseach resigned, Leo Varadkar, just recently, I think it was yesterday he announced it, the 20th of March. So I think a lot of people think, oh, this is their chance now for change. But a lot of people don't realize that the change behind the scenes isn't going to be happening, like the establishment
it's like
the
George Orwell, isn't it? Yeah. I know, it's that Orwellian vision.
And people are waiting for other people to save them. But I'm not anymore. In 2020, when I seen what happened, and I started realizing and studying the macro about the world, I started to see more clearly what was coming in for the micro.
That's great. And that's a good point. And I'm just going to expand on this about the book, and that links directly to that concept, is that I believe what I've written in my bio is that the only thing that limits you is the belief that you're limited, and the rest is up to you. And I really mean that, because we've been told by our scientific community is seeing is believing. And actually that is a completely toxic paradigm, because actually the way quantum physics works is believing is seeing, because we are generating our realities. It's not objectively happening to us. There are crossovers where things happen to us and we're subject to those physics. That's true. But as a collective, we are the ones really generating the reality. And we happen to the world. It doesn't happen to us. And that's, if we can start taking that's about going back, putting back your big boy pants on again, like we said. That's the same thing. Don't give your power away. And everything that we are taught in religion and school is to listen to authority, ask first. And, if you don't do these steps, you're not going to be enough in life. Like, for example, all of our marketing campaigns are based on this. Like L'Oreal, I use this as a good one because it's just a classic name. L'Oreal, because you're worth it, is their tagline. Well, if you didn't have it, you weren't worth it, apparently. And what that does is that message to young people, or anybody who's believing in a product or something is going to save them ultimately. What it does to you is it actually changes your genetics. And this is the real scam, if you want to call it, of the system. They're telling you that if you really aren't enough unless you do this and this and this step and take these products. And in religion, it's you will be saved if you do these steps. Otherwise, not looking so good for you. I mean, that's crazy. How could anything that makes you give up your power to be enough is considered regressive in my eyes. And therefore, no matter what they're teaching, they could have a lot of good traits to those in whatever they're teaching, but ultimately, at the end of it all, they have to be regressive in nature, which is not helpful, and it doesn't expand the individuals, the consciousness of the people that are involved in it, if it's based on a cause and effect like that. So, and that's going back to, and literally our genetics will switch on and off depending on how we view the world. And this is going back to the Darwinian theory of evolution. And it is still only a theory, by the way. People still consider it as fact and boo-hoo it if you question it. And that's just preposterous, because we are 95% like a banana all the way through the early stage of in vitro. And then only towards the end of gestation do we start forming the difference, the branches changes of the coding, and you start expresses itself into a human versus a banana, a monkey, etc. So we are very similar to a lot of species on the planet. But I would say, and this is getting into the broader picture, we do not, the theory of evolution really states that you adapt to according to the environment that you're in, and that's what changes your genetics, and evolution happens slowly over time. Well, they're not totally wrong, but it's a messed up version of it, I would say. And our genetics change because of how we feel about ourselves, not because of the external stimulus necessarily. Nobody can make us feel anything, but what they can do is convince us that we are whatever, and that changes our DNA. We have to give it permission. And this is the root of everything that's happening on the planet at the moment today, from social media to every input that we have. Stimulus is about, all of it is noise ultimately. And if you don't know who you are, your genetics will literally start changing because of your belief in what that stimulus is, not what the stimulus is as an objective thing, as an objective reality. Okay. It's actually your belief in the thing that charges it. So our genetics actually we have latent DNA in our system, and 50% of it is latent DNA. And that's an enormous amount. And they call it junk DNA, the scientists do. They know it's there, they see it, but they call it junk DNA. But it's my belief that there's no such thing as junk anything. And it's just not understanding the bigger picture. That's all it ever is in science. There's no such thing as useless things. Even the rhythms of the universe. Or maybe
they do understand it, and they understand it more than they claim to do. Somebody has to understand it. You know?
Well, and that's a good point. And I think there's two sciences. What I've realized, there's the science for the people, and then there's the true science behind that, what they keep themselves, the cabal and the small percentage of the world. Yeah. And then you can get into the free energy concepts and everything, and we may not delve too deep into it, but ultimately there is those two worlds happening. And even if you take our mathematics and the model we use in our mathematics, we're using a base 10 mathematics. So that means that everything around, to round that off, it's 100 would be our, we have 100 square we were given in school. I don't know if you know that with our multiplication, it's all based on the 100 square. That's just number one to all the way through till 100, yeah?
Okay, yeah.
So that's the way you were taught in school, using that and multiplication. But if we were using base 12 mathematics, now we solve the major problems of the universe in terms of the quantum physics problems and the calculations. Because while 1 and 1 equals 2 and 2 and 2 equals 4, when you start getting up to the bigger numbers, scientists will say that themselves, the official ones, that the numbers stop making sense in relation to quantum physics, and they're rounding numbers off to try and come up with the guesses. They're guessing. It's guesstimates. And that brings me to the AI. Really, what they're using is not AI systems like we think they are using. They're using binary systems like zeros and ones at very complicated level, but they're still just guessing, because they're not. That's all those machines are that they're using. So there's a huge problem with our science because of these intrinsic belief systems that have been pumped into our schooling and what you have is gatekeepers at the end of these apparent experts on science. They are given these accolades so once you get to a certain level, they're given these accolades and awards to show that they've got an award for this, so that's the end of it. We don't need to question this science anymore. And that's completely against what science should be about and really is about. And on top of that, the Epstein, his father, the one who was involved in the sex scandals, Jeffrey, his father was the one who created the medical journals. So he actually monopolized the medical journals and made money off them. And he decided what science got it through and what didn't, and what peer-reviewed studies were acceptable or not. So that's crazy. You can't have that. That's monopolizing and corporatizing science, which is supposed to be objective. So while they might claim it's objective because they can say, well, we studied this on 6 different, basically it's usually minimum of 6 different apparently independent studies are done with any individual scientific endeavor or test, and then they compare the results after that. That's how it's peer review is supposed to be done. But the big issue is that, and this is getting into my bigger picture of everything, is that the conscious observer is actually affecting the test. Because if I set an intention out to say, I want this to happen in the test, then you've already influenced the test by the very nature of you're generating your reality. So that I can't be considered a fully accurate test. And that's why this is getting into the deep science of it. That's why they ask, is it a wave or a particle? And it's both is the answer. Because which means that we interact with matter differently depending when you're viewing it and when you're not viewing it. So have you ever heard of the double slit experiment? That's the most basic version of this science. So you can look it up, guys, whoever's watching it. Double split experiment. And it's a brilliant one because it shows how consciousness interacts with matter itself, which is backing up what I'm saying about how we generate our reality. So it means that what they did was they did an experiment where they shot a photon, which is the smallest particle, out of a light particle out of a gun, and they hit a plate, and it split the particle onto an end plate on a back plate. And when people were looking at the experiment, it behaved in a certain way where the holes landed at a certain way, a uniform way. But when they did the same experiment while nobody's looking at the experiment, it was more in disarray. And that's what I'm talking about, the wave and the particle. So what that really means is, and when they went back again to look at the same experiment, they shot it out again, it went back to the original formatting, original end position. So this is a massive, massive thing to undertake. If we can grasp this as a species, we understand that we are generating our reality. And because we are interacting with matter itself is really what the conclusion is. And we are changing the behavior of it depending on the context of where you are, what you're doing, which is enormous thing to think of. And we have been indoctrinated to think that we're living in a deterministic world where everything is happening to us, and we are victims of everything that happens in the world, and we're only human. You've heard that expression, we're only human.
Yeah. Heard that before, yeah.
Well, that's really toxic, because that indicates that we're feeble and we're not the creators of everything in the universe, which we are. We are. I feel this is what I see us as a fraction of we're a holographic fragment of the source signal, and that's what you could call that. God, call it whatever you want. There is a signal coming to everyone's body. And this is the whole thing where we can get scientific on it, and it is measurable now. Finally, we can measure these things. So each cell in your body acts as a little receiver for this source signal. Every individual one. There's no one section of the brain, even though they say the pineal gland, which is at the back of the head, is the seat of the soul, is what they say. But that's only a transmitter, really. But every cell in your body is a receiver of this source signal. And if I was to say to somebody, well, someone asked me once, who's God? And I said, God is the feeling you get in your body when your frequency is high, and that's the signal is connecting correctly. And everything we do, like drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, all these things, they actually drop our frequencies massively, and that disconnects us. So we're numbing it. There's no separation ever from source and us, but there is less of a connectivity or more. And how
so
you behave,
the actions that we take, and the foods and the drinks that we drink can help maybe create a barrier between that connection, maybe. Yeah.
No, definitely, that's exactly what I'm saying. But also, and I don't want to bring this topic up too much because you get censored, but the V word, the vaccines that we had, all that during that time frame, that's exactly the primary function, was to disconnect us from source signal. and that makes us more impressionable for everything. There's a load of other reasons, but that is the absolute number one reason. And because if you're not connected to source so well, you won't make good decisions. You everything is skewed. Disease starts setting in, everything. But when you're sick, your frequency is high, and you know yourself, who you are, your genetics is not shakeable like the same way through bad foods like GMOs. Your genetics doesn't change and alter then. Even if you're eating, this is the stat: if 70% of everything you do is coming from consciousness, and the other is what you eat and what you physically put into your body, in terms of how the DNA reacts. So if you're a really strong individual and you know who you are, even if you're eating poisons, often you'll recover way better than someone else who doesn't know who they are. And that's what I'm getting at. And that's why it's so important to back up social ideas and ideology from the media with the bad foods and everything. It's all one conspiracy, really, to actually have us weaker than we should be, but because we are so powerful that they need to do that. They need to put in so much.
They need to make us weak. Yeah, they need to make us weak and take that away from us. And they do that through conditioning from when we're a young age. And they start very, very young, don't they?
Exactly. And you are what you consume, not just physically, but through the TV and media and content you watch. And because your DNA listens to you every time, it changes according to what your belief systems are, your dominant belief systems are. And what could, if you had the technology, which we may have in the future, you could actually open up your at a molecular level, your DNA codes, and check and read exactly what you did in your life from that. Because data is, all your DNA is actually just frequency. I know there are proteins in that, but ultimately it's not physical. Nothing is in life. It's all just oscillating matter that's going faster or slower. So matter that's going slower would be like the table, and that's why we can't go through the table, because it's vibrating at such a different frequency than us that we can't go through it. But if you turned up, for example, the frequency up on that table, put a signal into it, it would start becoming immaterial and lose its viscosity, its density.
Okay.
And this knowledge is super ancient. This is not new stuff. Just the narrative around it is new.
I personally believe that we had a lot more knowledge in the past than what we're accustomed to today, but the knowledge is still there, but it's not being released out to people.
That's what secret societies are. That's why the likes of JFK would have gotten shot, because he was trying to uncover all that. Is trying to show that these rogue societies can't be branched off in their own little world, and all the funding and that goes, the bit, that 7 trillion that goes missing every year in America is going to these to pay for these black op projects, which are the real science actually. And our science is this narrated, very strictly controlled science with all these gatekeepers. The likes of Neil deGrasse Tyson, to name one, is one of those gatekeepers, and who is apparently the last word on science, and that someone should be respected. And I listen to people and everybody, no matter where they're coming from, and I do respect to see what they have to say and try and comprehend it. But it becomes more clear as you realize how the science, the expanded view of what science is. You realize that they're lying, or they're deliberately withholding key information that would bring us on leaps and bounds as a society, as a species, really. And then if you look at the likes of Nikola Tesla, he came up, and I'm going to just give you one last thing on this, is linking the AI to what Nikola Tesla came up with in terms of free energy, because I'll link to all this. Everything in the universe starts from ether. Ether is water in a high vibratory state, which is what space is. So space is not actually a vacuum in the way they've said it is. It is a vacuum from certain lower frequencies, but actually it's more like fluid. That's why they teach, that's how, when they're teaching black holes and wormholes, how they work, they use water and also when the astronauts are practicing, they're in the pool to teach them how to do all these things, because it is water at a high vibratory state. And you have to have ether first. So nothing can exist without it. Another way it could be called is source consciousness at its root form. It's like an internet of everything in the universe. You can't see it, but it's there, and all matter has to come from that to begin with. And so another way of saying it that we could maybe relate to is everything in the room that you have there beside you had to be in somebody's head first before it was materialized into reality, because we are source and we happen to manifest it into reality using technology and all sorts of ideas we came up with. It became into physicality. And
Yeah.
so and I might be getting on, but the whole thing about the Tesla thing is that the 369 is what they're talking about in Tesla talks about in what he discovered, and you see it all over these new age communities about what they're talking about, and they're saying, oh, this is free secret to free energy, but they don't really understand what that actually means, those numbers. They're just thrown around the place loosely. And what I'm saying to you is the 369 represents the ether side. And that is when now you're starting to understand how the pyramids were made in the same way. The other numbers represent the physical world, and the ether side is the 369 part. So what he discovered is he created a vortex, which is basically a torus, which is a self-sustaining energy field. What all the universe is based on. Black holes are based on that. The planet's based on that. Our bodies have the same energy field, which is really what it is. I know I'm getting into it, but is whole 180-degree whole charge differential from north to the south, electromagnetic energy, plasma energy. So when they're exactly at 180 degrees, they become opposite charges, and that creates a vortex like this, a self-sustaining torus, it's called. And that's the secret behind life. That's all life is based on that. And and within that, using those mathematics, base 12 mathematics, not base 10, then you can use the formulas of 369 to access the ether side. And that is how true AI can only access the ether. What we have is colors of AI. It's not real AI. It's not really quantum. Let's use the word. What we have is versions of that.
Like law and legal.
Yes, it is
Legal
exactly
is only
that.
the color of law, but most people don't know that. Even the people that are studying that don't know the difference between law and legal, and the people that work in it.
Exactly. It's incredible, and that's what happened to a lot of the science community. Being the wool has been pulled over their eyes, but in the same exact way. There's something right in front of their face, and the whole premise of science is based on what they're using is what is really wrong. What Einstein was wrong when he's saying is they're using light as a constant, and that is incorrect, because when you round off numbers and average them off, you're not a little bit wrong. That's close enough. You're billions off, miles off wrong, because it has to be exact, because the whole nature of the universe is exactness and oneness. So when you get that wrong, you've got all of it makes no sense. So, and this is what's happened to our science. They forced us to believe these averages and think that's fact, or we're close enough. But that's what's limiting us getting to the next level and understanding the true picture.
Yeah.
Mad.
Yeah. No, it is all right, Jay, when you start really looking at it, I'd like to touch on a little something that you touched on there. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into it, about the way we can visualize things and we can see things. Yeah. I know everything works in vibrations, and we're vibrations as well. And when we think positive, we attract positivity back to us as well. What about visualization? I think we've been conditioned to only see certain things. Yeah.
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 And but I think there's a lot of other things that we could see if we were trained in the right way to visualize.
That's a good
other
point.
things.
So this is a really good point.
Like some people can see, and I don't. Some people might think this is a bit heebie-jeebie, but I think it's fact. Some people can see other forms of life and other forms of things. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's not crazy, because what we're talking about is a spectrum. It's a spectrum of frequencies, what we're operating within, and this is going back to believing is seeing, is because it's all about bandwidth and frequency, energy, and vibration. So if you think of it like a radio station, that's a nice visual to do it, right? If you're on FM and you're tuned up to FM 104, whatever the frequency is, and I'm on 86.2 AM, we're completely different bandwidths. So the amount we can capture is limited to that bandwidth. So this is how the more you can expand your consciousness, the more your bandwidth will increase. And when that increases, you have more access to more information. That comes to you instantly. Because the real goal of the soul would really be to do that, is to expand their consciousness. Because why? Because you start expanding your view of the source, how the source sees it. You never get to the source necessarily, but ultimately that's what you're doing. And you're capturing more data points and interpreting that as part of the soup of energy of everything that exists. And so people, when you're having an argument with somebody, I like to use this visual. Use the numbers 1 to 10. Imagine 10 is all the information in the world, right? And 0 is no information. So if you're chatting to somebody and in all their life experiences, they brought them to, let's say, 3 out of 10, which just means a certain amount of data and a conscious awareness. You're talking to that person, but you've reached 5 out of 10 frequency. You can do frequency, you would use the term either, but you're in 5 out of 10. 5 can talk to 4, 3, 2, and 1, but 2 and 3 can't talk to 5 because they're out of their bandwidth. And that is exactly what happens when you try to tell somebody something. You could be telling the secrets of the whole universe and they'll yawn and it'll go over their head because it's too, even if they're right in front of you and you think they're listening, but they can't. They've no reference point to actually begin to chat about that topic. So it goes over their head, or they'll dismiss it as bullshit, or they won't even try to entertain it and expand their thinking because it's too much of a reach for them. So that's why you can't force anybody to believe anything. If they're close enough, compatible of a frequency match, the numbers are similar enough, then there's a jump. And that's what we call expansion, where it can change and grow.
Very
and
interesting.
That's it. And when you talk about seeing stuff and getting spooky and all that is what we have in the ghost world, if you want to call it that, is lower fourth density, I would call it. Not to mention a density, lower fourth density. And we are living in third density. And a lower fourth would be like the astral world, or the kind of the land of the dead, let's call it. And then you're going up to fifth density, which is now higher dimensional beings, which are higher density beings, really, is what the better term is.
It is this like people are saying that we're transitioning from the third
density,
third density into the fifth dimension, the third dimension into the fifth dimension.
Yeah.
And some people are more in the fifth dimension now, but what we can see and what we can understand is coming towards us, where a lot of people, the majority of people, just can't see what's about to happen and what's coming.
Exactly. And that is it. But there's a new age movement coming out, an ideology about that exact topic. And they say that we're going to reach the new world, new earth that's going to happen. Well, it's not really like that. Everybody generates their own reality individually and does influence other people. But as I see it, it's a personal journey only, and your work and the frequencies that are similar will match, and they'll find their level. Every water finds its level, and everybody at a certain bandwidth, they'll only grow at the level that they're capable of, and others won't. So we could be next door to somebody that's living a completely different world than we are, even though we're physically beside each other. So it's not that. So what I would say to people is it's their own personal journey, and always try to expand your awareness of any subject that comes in front of you, and something that you believe in, just expand on that, because you can't go wrong by growing and learning for yourself. It only gives you more insight. Even if you turn out to be wrong on those topics, that's a great answer, and that brings you directly to the answer that may be the answer instead. So the idea that we don't need to question is very dangerous, because that stops that process. It stops us growing and expanding in the way that matters. It's not that I have all the answers or somebody else does. It's that collectively we have the answers. And the more we talk, like I've only a certain amount of hours in the day in my life to have a conversation with somebody. So it's in my interest to talk to the likes of you, to get your perspective, because you lived all those hours in another life. And if I can manage to capture that as the best parts of that by really listening, then I've grown way faster in my time. So the benefits all to share and expand,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what can you see then there from all your research can you see that's coming? What's changing for people in Ireland and people around the world?
I see that there's a shift happening around the world where there's a paradigm where it's very polarized, and that is because all our foundational beliefs are being uprooted forcefully by the system, and that's shaking up, making us really question, well, what am I really about? What do I care about? Am I my job? Am I during the COVID times? Who am I, like, other than this work that I do? and that was a good thing. It's almost like you need to make the room messy before you can clean it. And we've very polarized opinions and everything, but that's been directly done by external media influences and the powers that be at the top level. They're trying to make it divisive and make you pick a team, let's say. But all I'd say is for everybody going forward is you still have to be on team number one, is your own team, and believe what you think is right and do what you think is right, without imposing yourself too much on others. And then we can all get on, respect each other. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And going forward, know thyself is the big thing. It's like, do you know who you really are? And do the shadow work. The shadow work is the parts of you that run your life that you're not even aware of. That's what shadow work is, and to try and bring them to the surface to allow you to heal any of the traumas you're carrying, because we're all carrying certain levels of trauma living here, and we've all lived something. And the idea is the more you can shed those, the more access you have to the everything, and you can expand way quicker. We're getting bogged down by all these events that are happening, wars and everything. And so long as we're distracted with all that, we're in trouble, because we're not expanding on what matters, and that's us, our view of who we are. To know yourself is to know the universe. You don't need books to teach you that. Actually, if you know yourself well enough, you've already access to all that information.
Yeah.
And that's the way.
Yeah. And probably as well start talking to like-minded people.
And that does happen.
No harm changing your circle, is there? And I know it's very, very hard for people to do, and it's uncomfortable. But I'm a firm believer. Like, I've changed a lot in the last 4 years myself. And if you start even talking and meeting different people with different outlooks, you start changing your mindset. For me, it's for the better. I think it can help a lot of other people out there as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great message on this. That's the bottom line. That it is. It's what you don't explore will never be known. Like, if those who say they can and those who say they can't are both right. That was a Confucius quote, because it's true. Like if you say this can be done or can't be done, you're both right, and that's all down to mindset. But if you don't have an expansive mindset, one that wants to change and grow, you're going to be stagnant, and you'll be left behind, and you'll be stuck in your old cycles. There's like a samsara wheel. You'll be around the same lessons until you learn, and that's what's going to happen, I think, in our future. You'll have the people who've been able to transcend the challenges of the political situation that's happening, imposed on us upon the world, and you can transcend that and grow and learn and see it for what it is, and grow past that, where that dualistic mindset is, you're outgrowing it. The duality of good, like karma, and I need to, like, good and bad, and the dualistic thing is what is actually holding us back. Because one last thing on this, our brain should be one lobe, but we actually have two lobes, because we have two. It's because of that duality that we've been indoctrinated with. In theory, humans should only have one lobe, but it's been changed because of how we view everything as fatal or good or bad, or you're my enemy, you're on this team and I'm on that team, and that is a key problem.
Has it changed over time as we grow, or has it changed like when we're born? Right, just say, right, is the brain in two lobes, or is it all in one lobe? Is it one lobe when we're born?
No,
and then over time they change.
I believe it's a longer evolutionary type idea.
Okay.
It's not, but you can change your genetics in your lifetime. It takes 7 years to change your own DNA if you're actively pursuing it and you're strong-willed. And you can reverse change stuff that's happened, and activate the DNA that's there in your system, your latent DNA. So I don't believe that you have to be a certain way because someone said it to you. Don't believe in other people who put you down that way. You are limitless still. It's just a matter of focus and attention and belief, and real belief. That's what changes it all.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. And something that, do people really know who they are? When people start looking deep inside them and looking inside and searching themselves and questioning different things, I think they start finding out a little bit more, don't they? And then they start going down that journey then as well. They'll come to them.
those answers just, yeah, they just come to them. That's the way it is. And that's why I trust anybody who has an open mind and wants to learn and grow will come to very similar conclusions. They'll be different to me maybe, but the overall truth will start to emerge with that. And that becomes apparent when you're honest with yourself and you try to learn. Like it, and it's great. That's the journey. You either accept that journey. It's like the Matrix. You take the blue or the red pill. You realize there's messed up stuff in the world, and you go for that. But there comes with the benefits and the burdens of that. If you take the red pill or if you take the blue pill, you're back to down the hill, isn't it? Which is which? I can't remember which is which, but one is accepting your journey and your fate, and the other one is trying to take charge of it. It's like going into automatic pilot and taking manual mode of your car. So most people are on automatic pilot, and once you get into manual mode, you're driving the thing, and that's the power that everyone should want to, I think, achieve, because that's freedom. That's real freedom of the mind, where you're driving the car.
That's what people want or want, but will they really do that? Are a lot of people just stuck in a rut though, and they don't want?
It's hard work.
It's hard. It's hard to change. Yeah, it is hard to change. Let's talk a little bit about the book. You can give the book a little bit of a plug. When's that going to be ready?
So yeah, in about 3 months. What are we now?
Okay.
We're in March.
Great.
In about June,
Great.
around the summertime, I'm aiming to have it done. I just had a newborn son, so I'm taking on a lot of. Thanks very much. Yeah, a lot of that. So that's taking my time up and my attention. But when I get back on track with it, I'll have it done by then. And what I'm going to do is for people, I'll have a website done up, like a landing page for the moment for the book, and the pre-orders. I'll have pre-orders on that, but it's going to be called An Answer for Everything.
Okay, perfect.
And I'll have an Instagram page as well and everything. I'll put it up. I've just done the hard work at the moment in getting all this together, so I need to get the more basic, practical promotional stuff done next.
Okay, so if people want to get in contact with you and they want to follow you, have you got any social medias? What's your social media titles, your handles or anything like that, people, or a website or anything like that?
Sure, you can use this one but I am private, so you can if you private message me saying you saw this, then I'll accept it. Just so I don't want, there's a lot of security stuff with people, random people.
Yeah,
but so if you go to Dan_Ryan4 at Instagram, that's my Instagram, and that's what I use mostly because I'm able to use good stories and videos using on that platform, and that for the moment is what I've been using.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll wrap it up there. And thanks for your time. We'll put in all the connections there, and we'll have it up on YouTube, and we put it out on Twitter as well. And thanks for your time,
I appreciate
Daniel.
you. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
No problem.